Welcome to the Wild Crone Wisdom podcast with your host Vinutha Mohan. In this episode, we explored the concept of non resistance to life. What does it mean when we say pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional? The spiritual teacher Byron Katie calls herself lover of reality. According to her, reality is God, as we are all powerless against it, no matter how rich and powerful we might be. The COVID pandemic is case in point. After having spent over 2 decades studying and practicing various religions and listening to hundreds of teachings, I have come to the conclusion that all religions and spiritual teachings have only one bottom line message: drop resistance to what is. The image that goes with this for me is the Star Trek fictional species called the Borg. I imagine reality saying to us, we are the Borg. Resistance is futile. So many of my clients and friends struggle with this truth, as do I. Life is not following our script. There are some characters in our reality to whom we want to scream, "What are you doing in my story? Get out!" To other characters, we plead, "Why aren't you in my story? Why aren't you featuring in my story? Come back, or please magically reappear or appear." Either way, there is so much resistance to how our lives unfold individually as well as collectively. We cope with this resistance in myriad ways: denial, magical thinking, enabling, creating fake news, myth making, spiritual bypassing, running away to retreats, meditating away our problems, wearing crystals, talismans, taking Epsom salt baths, using substances, shopping, and on and on. Very few of us have the courage to step into the serenity prayer that says, "Lord, give me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference." Most of us lack this wisdom. The spiritual teacher Eckhart Tolle says that in any given situation, we have only three stances that bring us to peace: accept the situation, change the situation, leave the situation. Many times, we cannot accept, try to change, and are afraid to leave. So we stay stuck in our unhappy marriages, meaningless jobs, draining relationships, hoping for some magical wand which will make it all go away. Or perhaps a rescuer will show up and finally give us the life we truly deserve. So, what is the answer? Perhaps we can look to the Zen equation as a guidepost. The Zen equation plots the pain of reality on the x axis and resistance on the y axis. Suffering equals pain of reality multiplied by resistance. Very often, there is nothing we can do about the pain of reality. As Buddha said, pain is part of the human journey and is often impersonal. So the only variable we can manipulate is the resistance. By dropping the resistance to what is, we can perhaps reduce our suffering. What is the truth about just this moment, not the Greek mythology that we have made up about this moment. It does not mean learned helplessness. In an ideal scenario, by dropping the resistance to zero, we would eliminate suffering altogether, because anything multiplied by zero equals zero. That is why they say pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. Recently, on a workday morning, I found out that Xfinity had shut down internet service for reasons that no one could explain. On top of that, PG&E had shut down power as part of some maintenance work, and I was not aware of this. No power and no internet were the pain of my reality. There was nothing I could do about that. On a scale of 0 to 10, let's plot that on the x axis as a 9. Initial irritation and tension about the client calls and Zoom classes, etc., rose quite high and could be plotted on the y axis at a 10. So you could see the instant escalation of suffering. Blaming the Mercury retrograde, and after a few minutes of cussing, I worked slowly to drop the resistance and started to think about what the universe was trying to tell me. Perhaps it was a day of unscheduled R&R. As I eased myself into this new reality, I started to think of ways to spend the day. Long walks, reading a book, doing some art, sleeping, gardening, catching up with friends. At the end of the day, when everything was restored, I had actually had one of the best days in a while and a much needed pause. On the graph, while the POR, the pain of reality, might still be a 9, as resistance dropped to a 1 or 0, there was no more suffering. We often find ourselves entangled in the intricate dance of existence, where moments of bliss intertwine with challenges unforeseen. Yet, amidst the chaos, there lies a profound invitation to surrender, to let go of the illusion of control, and to embrace the inherent wisdom of the present moment. In the narrative of our lives, resistance is indeed futile, for it is in the act of surrender that true liberation is found. So, let us heed the timeless wisdom echoed by spiritual sages such as Eckhart Tolle. Leave life alone. Let it be. In this surrender, we discover the serenity that comes from accepting what is, transcending suffering, and embracing the ineffable beauty of existence itself. Hence the cliched statement, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional, and resistance is futile. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Wild Crone Wisdom with your host Vinutha Mohan. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist from the Bay Area, California, specializing in trauma and attachment repair. I'm also a certified EMDR specialist and a certified shamanic practitioner. In this podcast series, we delve into the journey of our spiritual essence having a human experience. While many social scientists study human emotions, thoughts, and behaviors, and others explore transcendental experiences, few bridge the gap to help embody the spiritual wisdom in everyday life. I call this the psycho-spiritual path. Through this podcast, I hope to share bite-sized practical insights for navigating life as an empowered sovereign being. If you found this episode valuable, we'd greatly appreciate your support. Please consider rating, reviewing, commenting, and subscribing on your podcast platform to help us reach a wider audience. You can explore more of my writings on Medium by following the link in the show notes. We'd also love to hear about your experience, so feel free to share your thoughts with us at Wild Crone Wisdom Podcast at gmail.com. Thank you for being part of our journey. Please be advised, the information provided in the Wild Crone Wisdom podcast is intended for general information purposes only. Vinutha Mohan is a licensed therapist and healer. However, the content shared in this podcast does not replace or constitute professional advice, therapy, or counseling. It is essential to consult with a qualified mental health professional for personalized guidance regarding your unique circumstances. Thank you.